All right, we've got shoulders today. So we're going to be using dumbbells and bands. Honestly, you could interchange them if you wanted to. If you didn't have dumbbells, you could only use bands, vice versa. Um, I do want to talk about real quick as we do our first exercise a little bit of philosophy for shoulder training because there's a lot of different ways you can approach shoulders, especially with exercise selection. There's a lot of differing opinions out there, so I'll share with you mine, what I've gravitated to over the years versus the way that I started. So the first movement that we're going to be doing is called a Scott press. So Larry Scott, former bodybuilder, made this exercise popular. Who knows if he was the first one to do it, but they named it after him. So all we need for this is a bench. I personally like doing them without a back support. I find that when I have a back support, it's too tempting to want to lean into that and kind of push back into it, and the butt starts to come forward, and pretty soon this becomes an incline press and we start using chest. You end up moving a lot more weight that way, but it's not about moving weight. It's about making those deltoids work harder because, after all, this is shoulder day, not chest day. So with that said, let me grab a set of dumbbells. Going relatively light with these. I don't want to go too heavy. This is requires a bit of discipline with technique. And first, let me show you what it looks like, and then I'll explain the difference between this and a traditional shoulder press. So Scott press, starting with the dumbbell out relatively wide. Whatever that angle is at the elbow there, you'll notice that as we press up, that it doesn't really change. So coming down nice and low, and then back up, just like that. So what's the main difference between this and a regular shoulder press? For example, if I decide to come up in here and even press to the middle, somewhat similar. The big difference is this right here is a compound movement. So we have movement at the elbow, which means that we're also using triceps. Versus this, we have almost no movement at the elbow. So this becomes almost more of a shoulder isolation exercise, which is one of the reasons why I like it. What's the downside? Well, the downside is you can't use as much weight. When we're using our triceps, they're strong, so we can press heavier dumbbells. So it's fun. It's cool to be able to move heavy weight. But if our goal is to build our physique, shape our physique, then we don't really need as much compound movements as a lot of people think. If you're playing sports, that's totally different. Than compound movements serve a purpose, right? That is all about using all those muscles for a certain movement and coordinating those efforts. But that's one of the big differences between, let's call it strength training, especially for sport, versus bodybuilding. Like, I used to think that you needed all these big compound movements. I was always taught that that is your foundation for bodybuilding, is all the compound movements. It's going to be your squat. That's going to be your bench press. That's going to be your military press. Through the years, I just realized that's not really true when it comes to bodybuilding. I think they can play a part. I think you can integrate them into it, but I don't think it's necessary. So, with that said, that actually was a hair light. I'm going to go ahead and stick to these anyway, do more reps. That'll bump up the intensity. I'm going to keep my rep speed nice and controlled with the eccentric and the concentric. Nice controlled concentric there. So we have more time under tension, and that is going to help us kick up the intensity without having to go quite so heavy. So again, starting off nice and wide, those elbows down low and up to the middle. That's 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, yeah. Now, as far as range of motion in the deltoid, spin around and face the mirror. So I'm going to look in the mirror so I can see it myself. But if we're doing this right here, so look at the range of motion of the elbow. So starting here, and it finishes here. So don't focus on the hand, focus on the shoulder. Here versus here, it's no different than here versus here with a shoulder press. Same exact range of motion with the deltoid. So the big difference, like I said, with a movement like this, we're taking the triceps out of it. Now, I do like doing more of a traditional style shoulder press, but even then I try to minimize the use of the triceps so they don't start to take over. So instead of this right here where you see a ton of movement at the elbow pressing in towards the center here, like from here to here, that's delts. But when I start coming in here, look at all that movement at the elbow, start using a lot of triceps. So what I try to do is minimize that. I personally like pressing straight up with dumbbells. And now I've minimized some of that movement at the elbow using a little bit less triceps. But again, like this exercise, you're not gonna be able to move as much weight that way. So you just have to ask yourself, what's your goal? That's the most important question to ask. All right. So sticking to about 90 seconds rest in between. That was a little longer. I was talking too much. Here we go. There's 5, 6, 7. Wow. All right, so in that case, I still want to get a few more reps. So this is where you're going to use a rest pause, unless you have a spotter who's going to help you, a training partner. So in this case, just rest, shake it off, get a couple more. You know, it's interesting through the years talking about this stuff, and I've talked about it for a long time. You gotta remember, I've been doing YouTube videos on this since 2009. And I always got so much flack for some of the things I said. People disagreed with it because they get so caught up in this training dogma, thinking just one way. And it's been interesting through the years watching people all of a sudden change their tune. So now I'm starting to hear more people start to say the same things. And I don't think I had anything to do with it. I just think it's the natural evolution. You train long enough, you start to learn, start to come to these realizations. It's almost like maturing and training, and then you wish you could go back in time and apply all this stuff earlier on. But, you know, I guess that's just the natural evolution, like I said. Try to stretch out between your sets. We got one more, and we'll move to our next exercise. Now, last week's workout, we did a lot of stuff with bands, some unique angles. I gotta say, that was probably one of my favorite shoulder workouts, just because it was so effective at hitting middle and rear delts with some of these different angles that we were doing. with bands, you can create resistance in different planes, and you can just kind of create a resistance that's very unique, very different than dumbbells alone. I'd recommend definitely going and checking that one out. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same thing. All right, try to get 3 more. 1, 2, that's 9. Good stuff. Good stuff. Mind you, those are only 30-pound dumbbells. Now, I don't know what I would shoulder press these days if I was just trying to sling weight. I used to typically start with 75s, do second set with 80s, third set with 85s. But the funny thing is, I still never felt that really good burn in the delts like I do going a little bit lighter, more control, using a little more technique. So it's not about training light. I say this all the time, but I can't say it enough. It's not about lightweight versus heavyweight. It's about using a weight that's heavy enough. You want to go as heavy as you can while still using control. Getting that good, time under tension, getting that good range of motion, getting that strong contraction, that good mind-muscle connection, that little bit of an isometric squeeze. And that makes that exercise so much harder, and you're not able to move as much weight. So it's not about lightweight versus heavyweight. Like, weight is all relative. My heavyweight might be somebody else's lightweight, and vice versa. So it's not about absolute poundage. It's about how heavy does it feel when you're doing the exercise, and how hard are you making the muscle work? And that's the most important thing. Now, lightweight would be just skipping through, all your reps, doing 15, 16, 20 reps, whatever you're doing, and just breezing through it without making that muscle really work. Well, then, yeah, there's not adequate stimulus there to build muscle. So that would be my definition of training light. And it really just boils down to intensity. Was it intense or not? All right, so we're going to move on to rear delts. And I'm going to do these with dumbbells and doing a finisher with a band, which is going to be a high pull apart, which is one of my favorite exercises for rear delts. It just happens to be the one where I really feel that good strong contraction. I feel like I can zero in on the rear delts more without using as much traps and rhomboids, etc. And I think that's one of the challenges of hitting rear delts or targeting them more, is there's so many other muscles that your body naturally wants to recruit. They can easily start to take over, dominate that movement, especially the traps. Think about a lot of people, they get a lot of movement there at the shoulder blade, right? And so much of that movement is just happening there at the scapula. And so trapezius is a much bigger, stronger muscle than your rear delts. So you can see barely have much of an angle here, but this is perfect. And I'm going to start with the dumbbells, keeping these very, very light, relatively speaking, because I have to in order to get, one, the range of motion that I want, but more importantly, to be able to get that momentary pause, that squeeze at the top. When you see someone who can't hold it there at the top, that's telling you that the weight's too heavy. Just momentary pause, just for a second, and then control it. So again, it's all about control. So these are little baby dumbbells, but it's plenty to make those rear delts work hard if you're doing it the right way. So what I don't want to do, I don't want to get that movement there at the scapula. See my shoulder blades squeezing together? I don't want that. I want to think about going out towards the sides, and you see my scapula is relatively stable. So if you kind of zoom in on the shoulder blades, so you can see the difference between this, where it's relatively stable, versus this. This is where the traps are starting to take over. So I'm thinking about going out towards the sides, and I like to bring it up a little bit higher, almost kind of like top of ear height, right there. Here we go. Now, I can already tell you that I need to go down. I didn't even have to do that rep. Here we go. I stop short down here at the bottom to keep tension. That little momentary squeeze at the top. Just a fraction of a second. But you want to demonstrate control. Let me get a couple more. Oh, nice. I'm going to grab a band. It's the exact same thing with the band. So not low. If I come here at chest height, look at the movement at the scapula again. This becomes more of a back exercise. I'm going to keep this a little bit higher. And again, think about going to the outside. Nice. So the bands are cool for doing a little drill. You can't do these with dumbbells, because with dumbbells, you have to be horizontal, position your body. With bands, we have resistance in each plane, so we can do these standing up. Just come up against a wall and do the movement. And the wall kind of gives you that feedback. You can feel if your shoulder blades are moving against the wall. So this is where you want to try to keep them nice and stable and do this exercise. And then try to do it the wrong way and see how it feels. And you'll definitely feel a difference there. So a little drill you can try. And that's what this idea of mind-muscle connection is to me. I think everyone has a slightly different definition. My definition is that ability to zero in and focus. It's that focused effort and being able to try to minimize some of those other assister muscles that naturally your body wants to recruit. It's like the example I used to give a long time ago is if you ran out of gas, your car was stuck on the side of the road, what would you rather? One person pushing it, yourself, or having the assistance of 2-3 other friends? Well, of course, it's going to be a whole lot easier if you have more people helping you. It's the same with an exercise. One, zeroing in and making one muscle group work harder is much harder than having all those other friends assist with the movement. All right, here we go. That's 9. One more. 10. Same thing with the band. I really feel those. Nice. Good stuff. So we have one more set. So when we did our Scott press in the beginning, this technique versus this technique, it's still anterior delt dominant. It's still 60, 70% your anterior delt or the front of the shoulder. Maybe 20% middle delt. So we went from first exercise being anterior delt dominant. Now we're working rear delt. So after this, we're going to move to middle delt. And actually, we're going to combine, again, using bands as a finisher, but a different movement. So we're going to do a lateral raise with a band, but we're going to do a press with the band that's going to make those middle delts fire a bit more. It's borrowing from last week's workout. All right, here we go. So again, starting right here and stopping here. There's no resistance here in the middle. So too tempting to use this dead space to swing and generate momentum. We don't want to do that. We want a controlled concentric. So starting here, nice and controlled. Make the muscle do the work, not momentum. That's 8. 9. One more. So stay right there. I want you to see alignment. When I do these, I don't feel like I need to really come past here, this plane. So it's not even a straight line from hand to shoulder to shoulder to hand. It's even stopping short a bit, because anything past this, that's when I have to start moving the scapula, and that's where the trapezius starts to kick in. So you don't need a huge range of motion. You don't have to go as far back as you can. And everyone preaches full range of motion, but my question would be full range of motion of what? Full range of motion of the muscle or full range of motion of the joint? And there's a difference between the two. Good stuff. All right, let me rack these real quick. I'm trying to think if I'm going to use them at all for our presses, but I think we're going to stick to just the band. Last week we were doing the combination of the dumbbell with the band. All right. So we're going to start off with a shoulder press. And it's a variation that is going to make that middle delt fire more. And what we're going to do is anchor this band down low. See, I've already got my Undersun anchor here. Little padded strap that clip that into. Protects the band a bit more. And I'm also going to grab one of these generic brand fat grips. I say generic because Fat Grip is the first company that designed these. Designed to go over handles, dumbbells, barbells, but they work out really well for some shoulder exercises or different band exercises, this being one of them. Gives us a nice place to grab the band. So what we're going to do, step far enough away so we've got good tension here at the beginning of the range of motion, and we're going to press straight up just like this. And having this angle of pull like this, not only do I have resistance in this vertical plane, but it's also trying to pull my arm this way. So I'm having to counter that. And by doing that, it's making that middle delt fire more than it would in a traditional shoulder press. A lot more. 3, 4, even the rear delt. 5. Oh man. It feels so different compared to any other shoulder press I've ever done. I don't care if it's dumbbell, barbell, machines, doesn't matter. It's probably one of the most unique shoulder presses I've ever done in the way that it feels. Try it for yourself. All right, we're gonna do the other side. Man. That's a good one. So why is it making the rear delt fire more as well? Well, not only is it trying to pull my arm this way, but because the band is out in front, it's also trying to pull my arm forward. So we're having to stabilize, counter that as well. And that's making that rear delt fire as well. So this is an awesome exercise. We should just name this right now. I've watched every other band exercise I've ever tried to conjure up. Now it's like commonplace because since doing those videos starting in like 2016, I had to make this shit up. It's like, how do I take traditional bodybuilding style movements and do them with bands? Now everyone's just borrowed it. So this one we're gonna name it. This is the Grage press. Doesn't have a very nice ring to it though. Maybe we could call it the JG press. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, but borrow it. Borrow it, use it. I think you'll like it. Call it whatever you want to call it. All right, here we go. 6, 7, 8, oh, man, 9, 10. Whew. Now, it's going to feel very different depending on your distance from your anchor point. If I'm really close to this, look at how the angle of that band changes, and it's going to be a little bit closer to a traditional shoulder press. The more we step away, now look at that angle right there, and that's what really changes the dynamic of it. Which the cool thing is, you could start playing around with subtle angles and distance from your anchor point and totally change the way the exercise feels. So I feel like it's one of the first times I've ever been able to really like zero in on different parts of the deltoid with a press. I'll tell you what I didn't do though on the last set, and we're going to do it right now. Remember I said I was going to combine these with a lateral raise just to really finish things off. So we're going to do that the way I prefer to do them with a band. Step on it with one foot, step on with the other. Now I have this nice angle of pull here. This is really going to finish off that middle delt. One more. Other side. And if you want to, you could grab those fat grips and do the same thing here. Such a small band, it's not a lot of resistance. For me, I don't need it. It just becomes one more thing to do. Oh, good stuff. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. If you got yesterday's workout, I wasn't feeling so hot. A little bit better today. Still under the weather, but enough to come in here and get it done. I started to say it yesterday, but I think it's one thing that's important to note. I used to have this mentality that like, man, through thick or thin, it was like, didn't matter what was going on. If I felt like shit, if I was sick, whatever it was, I trained no matter what. Now I'll still try to get something in. Even if I'm feeling under the weather, man, if nothing else, I'll go through the motions. But remember this. When it comes to training, it's not just about the stimulus, what you do here in the gym. It's about the recovery process, right? It's that old saying, we come into the gym and we train and we break the muscle down, and in the recovery process, we build it back up, that old mantra. Well, our body only has so much resources. And so when our immune system is taxed because we're sick, the last thing that you want to do is go in there and blast out a crazy hard workout. Your body's already struggling as it is. So recovery is certainly going to be impaired, and more than likely it's also going to weaken your immune system or strain your immune system, possibly making you even worse as far as, whatever bug you have. Now, watch when I do these. I'm not just pressing straight up. Remember, same thing with the triceps. Trying to minimize that, so kicking the hand out a little bit, and I'm pressing out here. So a little bit less movement at the elbow. So less triceps involved, making those delts work harder. Man, they're already burning. Shit. Eight, 9, 10. Let's do the other side, and then we'll finish off with those lateral raises. One more. Oh, man. Shoulders are smoked right now. So we started with the right arm. So same thing here with our lateral raises. If I narrow my stance a little bit, I'm taking some of the tension off the band, make it a little bit easier here. Oh, yeah. Same thing. See if I can get 3 good ones. Oh, good, 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 good. That is a pretty thorough shoulder workout. Now, depending on what kind of look you're going for, a lot of people really want to build up the upper traps. You know, gives you that very muscular look. Truth be told, over the last probably 10 years of my training, I haven't really cared as much. So I do incorporate some training for traps, but I'm not doing crazy shrugs or anything. A lot of times I'll even do, whether bands or dumbbells, just even upright rows. So we're still working delts, especially hitting those middle delts, but also getting those traps involved if we elevate the shoulder up towards our ear when we're doing them. So totally up to you. I'm going to do a few sets here, nothing crazy. And I don't use very heavy weight. I don't like doing these with bar. I don't really care much for closed chain exercises, especially an upright row. I feel like it places a lot of strain on my joints, but with dumbbells, we have freedom of movement here. You know, the position of our hands, even the path of the dumbbell. So if I do them, I prefer them with dumbbells or bands. So it looks just like this. Coming right up till elbow to elbow is almost parallel with the floor. And you know, truthfully, these days is aggravating a tendon issue that I've had in my shoulder. So I'm going to do these with bands instead. I've learned through the years that if something starts to feel uncomfortable, if something's pinching, that old saying, no pain, no gain, doesn't apply to that. use your better judgment. See, that feels much better. Oh, nice. Anytime I do traps, I like to make sure that stretch them out. Try to make it a practice to stretch every muscle group in between sets, but truth be told, a lot of times I forget. Especially doing these videos, get up top or get caught up yapping too much. I'm going to do one more set of these. And I think that's going to be a wrap for me today. If I was feeling a little better, I would do probably just maybe a hair more. But as far as delts go, those things are on fire still. So plenty of stimulus for the shoulders. Here we go. And one small thing, see how my thumbs are pointing forward? For me, this happens to alleviate that little impingement I get in my shoulders. If my thumbs point towards each other, it makes it way worse. So with bands, that's one of the nice things for me is the freedom to make some of those small little adjustments that either A, alleviates any kind of impingement like that, or B, just as important, is dialing in where I feel like I'm getting a super strong contraction. And sometimes it's just a small little tweak that you make to your technique that makes a big difference in the quality of contraction that you get. And that's where I think, just time invested in your training, you're going to figure that stuff out over time. There really is not much of a shortcut for learning some of that stuff because it's, as I always say, not just mechanics. It's not like, the old things with the like numbered footsteps where people would like try to learn some sort of dance, like learn the cha-cha. It's not just, 1, 2, 3, 4, basic mechanics, and now you've got the exercise mastered. It is a feel thing. And so you can do an exercise where it looks identical to what someone else is doing, but it doesn't mean you feel it. Sometimes it's those little nuances, those little changes that make all the difference. And there's no substitute for learning that other than getting in there and doing it and trying different things. And so, I appreciate that there's a lot of people out there trying to share information. I try to share information, but, no one can really teach you how to feel. That's something you got to learn on your own. So that's a wrap. We'll be back in here for our next workout next week, Monday. Going to be hitting chest and triceps, so I'll see you then.